There. Now they should all be able to hear us.
Can the audience hear us?
I don't know.
Let us know in chat.
Yeah, there's a few folks.
I'm gonna go on it myself and see if I can hear. Oh, hey, there I am.
They hear us all. All right.
My left and right is cropped, but my top and bottom isn't cropped.
Oh my gosh. Mike Shea.
Mike Shea's picky.
Always asking me to.
I think Squatch. Jeff just forgets, how much high maintenance you are, Mike. That's all.
I get, yeah. Along with not remembering what key he has to use for alt, he also forgets how high maintenance.
There. Are you happy now? It's not in the stream yet. Hold on. There it is. Are you happy?
I'm happy. I was happy.
You
before.
wanted me to crop your top.
No,
but I am not
happy.
touching your bottom, Mike Shea. Don't ask.
Oh.
This is the behind the
yeah,
this screen.
This is the behind the DM screen.
Behind the screen.
Oh. Ooh, we got. No, not retweeted. Just liked by Beetle and Grimm.
Oh, cool. I wonder if that's Justice.
I don't know who runs their Twitter.
I know Justice Armand does a lot of work for them. Works for them. I think it's a jobby job. But I don't know if he does their social media.
Whoever uses it, sometimes it's very much like standard promotional sort of Twitter, and sometimes it's it comes off very much as like just whoever's running it using it as their personal D&D Twitter. So, anybody going to Gamehole Con? Dave wants to know.
Nope.
I'm
not doing any cons.
I would have considered Gen Con this year, given that I'm fully vaccinated at least. But then they moved it to September, and that's my school year, and I can't really take off time. I'm already taken off for professional conferences and stuff. So I think
that shows you how much I've paid attention, because I didn't even realize they moved it to September. Wow.
Oh, end of October? Oh, that's
end of October.
Looks like end of October is Gamehole Con. I think Gen Con is September.
Oh. Either one, I can't go during the school year.
That's always been the trick for me. Even Gen Con was getting tricky because like some years it was like I go to Gen Con and then I come back and immediately go straight to school.
And Monday, yeah. I know, that's why I never went, because it was always right at the time when I needed to be at work. So
and then they started creeping earlier, and then COVID happened, and they started creeping earlier, and I moved 2 hours away. Like Gen Con suddenly became infinitely more convenient. I wasn't in grad school anymore. Like everything was ready to go. But then a pandemic hit and it didn't happen. Now yours is doing weird things now.
Did I change
it's auto scaling, and I don't know why, because I have it set so.
I'm moving my own window around, but I can't imagine that's screwing things up in your end.
Popping in and out. It looked okay. So
let's talk about some games,
should we
man.
get this recording started then?
Let's do it.
Sure.
All right. My phone's going to be a pain in the butt tonight. Every now and then, I'm a dumbass, and I go to bed and I forget to plug my phone in overnight. And last night was one of them. So I've been running on fumes all day. So I managed to get it plugged in while we're sitting here, but it's in low power mode, so it's going to go to sleep every 30 seconds. So
do you have a cord?
It's plugged in now. That's what I'm saying. I said I've got it sitting here plugged in, but it's still in low power mode, so I don't know if it'll go to sleep when it's plugged in or not. We'll see.
I have a problem. I don't know what I'm talking about tonight.
Yeah, well, I don't have as much to talk about as I normally would, but somehow I am not worried about you coming up with things to say, Mike Shea.
No.
I could fill up
There you
time
go.
for both of you.
Uh-oh.
I did finish. Well, I'll talk about that when it's my time.
Let's save it for the
All
show.
right. Where did my? Oh yeah, I moved. I told you I'm using the two screens. I moved my recording software over to the iPad, so it is now recording. Get my mouse back on the right screen. Okay. So it is June of 2021. This is Behind the DM Screen from the Tome Show, and we are three DMs talking about our games and helping each other out, and that's all the intro you get. Say hello, Mike.
Hello.
And say hello, Sam.
Hello. But wait, is this June or are we doing for May?
This is June.
And it is June,
No.
but this is for
No,
the
no.
May.
How can it be in May? May's gone.
We did May, last May. I can always tell because I have my very elaborate script, and the previous script says BTDMS May 21. So this time I wrote
I mean, it can't.
June.
Either way, it can't be for May. It's not like you can, unless you're backdating.
No, but I
the
mean, it's
podcast.
only June 3rd, so we're talking about our games, how they went in May.
That is
Well,
true. Well,
That's
I ran
that's
one
what
last
I'm
night.
saying.
But that's never been how we did. We always
That was
record in the
special.
first week of the month, and we always label it with whatever that month is. Don't try to make me think through, like, fifth dimensionally here. I am not playing 3D chess.
Okay, anyway, I wasn't trying to mess with you, but the last BTDMS I have in the file to edit is April. So I'm like, crap, where's the May one?
Well,
So that's
I
where
need
that
to go
came
and look
from.
through the
It
files
was-
and make sure that I've correctly labeled May then, huh?
No, it's
whose
here.
time is
It's
this counting
here.
against?
It just never synced. It never synced, so it never
Oh, okay.
downloaded for me. So that's my fault. I'm
All right,
sorry. I
well,
apologize.
Just make
I
sure it's
was
there.
I was confused.
Dock him 3 minutes.
What did you say, Mike?
So dock him 3
It
minutes.
docked me 3 minutes.
All right, so we're going to talk about our games. I'm going to put 15 minutes on the clock, and I get to go first. So,
Ah,
uh-oh. I have the timer set for 15 minutes and 1 second. I don't want to give myself that extra second.
That's not fair. Need a third, fourth party validator.
Okay, so my time has started. I am talking about my game. I've got 2 campaigns going on like I did last time. I have my adult Deep Darkness game. The exciting news about my Deep Darkness game is that we are in person, face-to-face now. Every single person in my group is double vaccinated and several weeks out before we started getting together. And so here we are. So
Awesome.
yeah, we're meeting back in my basement, and the kids are my youngest is actually DMing he's DMing Icespire Peak for my oldest, and one of the other I've got a couple that comes and they bring their daughter, so he's running Icespire Peak for the two of them while we're over there playing our normal campaign. I haven't given all of that. We've done a good amount of play, but we've really only had 2 sessions that I can talk about since the last time we chatted. In those 2 sessions, though, we ran the Scrivener's Tale, which is one of the Mysteries of Candlekeep, or Candlekeep Mysteries, or whatever the name of that book is. It's one of the adventures from that book. In fact, it's the one written by Branda Stoddard, who everybody on the Tome Show knows. From our favorite Tome show, The Edition Wars. And so he wrote that, and I obviously I changed it because I cut out Candlekeep from this Candlekeep mystery, and I cut out there's this thing where the original story is you find this book, it marks everybody magically. And so you're kind of cursed with this mark, and you find out that the person who turned in the book to Candlekeep is in Baldur's Gate. So there's this whole go to Baldur's Gate and find this noble person and find out where they got it from and what's going on, so you can do your thing, right? I just skipped that entirely. I skipped the book actually entirely. I used it as a consequence to one of the things that happened in the Acererak battle. So in the fight with Acererak, I had that brilliant moment that I just absolutely adored when Acererak looked at the character and said, "Die." Right? He cast Power Word Kill, and I described it that way. I just, Acererak looks at you, and the flesh splits and tears as he opens his mouth and hisses "Die" at you, and you do. Right? And that's it. That's that. You just do. So that was brilliant. And then she came back like 2 rounds later because they had a Revivify ready to go, and I knew they did when he cast it. And so that was no big deal, except that she is my player who really she's really into the creative writing, and brings it into her role playing a lot. And so she writes these narratives of things of like things that happened in the game, but like as if she was writing a novel. And in this case, she wrote the experience of her dying and the visions that she had in the afterlife in the form of a poem. And in it, she describes meeting this entity that she thinks is and refers to as death. And I decided this was going to be my chance to bring in the Scrivener's Tale. And so the Scrivener's Tale is set up where basically there is an archfey, an evil archfey from the Gloaming Court that has been trapped in the book. And so you are marked by her, and slowly you're going to turn into glass because she's the Princess of Shadow Glass, and she was a rival to the Queen of Air and Darkness herself, and that's why she was exiled and trapped in this book. And so I decided that entity that she saw in the afterlife was the Princess of Shadow Glass, and had put the mark on her, and that the Queen of Air and Darkness, in an effort to make sure that this person who was exiled was never brought back, they destroyed all the books. So now the book that she's trapped in doesn't even exist. And so she marked herself onto this character who died, and slowly, as the curse spread, the words of the book started appearing on her skin, like slowly covering all of her skin. So that was how I replaced Candlekeep. From there, I just sort of, because the Princess of Shadow Glass starts talking in your head and whatever, I just skipped the whole go to Baldur's Gate and figure out where the book came from thing. The Archfey wants you to go there, wants to be set free. She knows where she was. Why wouldn't she just tell you? And I didn't want to deal with all that. They're highish level now, going and following this random trail of clues just wasn't very interesting for where we wanted to be. And so then they went straight to the ruins. The ruins involve, hey, you go down and the Scrivener is there himself, but is now a ghost and quite mad. And the vault that goes into the room where the Princess of Shadowglass was trapped is where you need to go to do the ritual that the ghost gives you to free her and then destroy her. Instead, so you can free her from the book and save your life, and then you can also kill her. But first, you got to get her down to 0 hit points. But to get in, you gotta open the door, and the door has 3 keys, and the keys are inside of these 3 statues down in this little mini dungeon. And of course, as soon as you do any damage to one of the statues, it comes to life and attacks you. And then, they describe it as a literal endless supply of mummies come out of the walls that were the scholars that were entombed in the walls. So this endless supply of, now it's not really endless because it comes in certain waves and there's a certain number of mummies per wave. So you can do the math and figure out how many there actually are. And so you go through, you destroy the mummies. There's a mural in one room where there's a painting or whatever of a black dragon being fought off by a bunch of wizards, and if you manipulate this one section, this rod comes out of it and it frees the dragon, and the dragon was real and trapped there as well. And the dragon's, that was an interesting conversation because the dragon's like, I don't really care about you. I think I'll just be on my way if that's okay. And they're like, okay, but what are you going to go do? I don't know, go reestablish my lair, eat some elves, whatever. And they're like, I don't think we could let you do that. Yeah. Right? I'm like, well, he's a black dragon. What'd you expect him to say? Right? You think he's going to, oh yeah, no, I promise. I'll totally be good. I found the error of my ways.
Vegetarian elf. Or vegetarian black dragon.
And so
Which adventure
the
was this in
Scrivener's Tale.
Candlekeep? Gotcha.
So it's one of the higher level ones. That's one of the, Candlekeep Mysteries has turned out to be a huge boon for me because it's like the only thing they've published with decently high level material. Like they walked out of the Tomb of the Nine Gods and defeated a Serac, and they're like 14th, 15th level now, and none of the adventurers have anything that high. But
they defeated a Serac?
yeah, well,
Did we talk about that
I
already?
think we didn't we?
I don't remember.
I thought so. I thought we did. Because we talked about, I think, Mike, we talked about your
Right.
Lich, your reworked Acererak.
Right. Yeah, and I remember him killing the character by saying
Yeah,
die.
so they
Man,
I mean, as much as you can beat a lich, they don't. It's not like they have his phylactery or whatever. They have an item that has trapped his soul on this world for the time being. But that's just until they die and they lose the item or whatever, and then Acererak goes and does whatever he wants, because that's how Acererak works. So at the very least, they've temporarily stopped him from being a pain to the world. So anyway, yeah. So they got the 3 keys. That was a fun encounter. The dragon was a fun little wrinkle because now they've gone through 2 major combats, and they've worn him down decently. And now you've got to go in and fight the Princess of Shadowglass. First, you have to summon her, and I like that. Unlike what normally happens in a lot of adventures, I find, instead of just sort of this ambiguous, vague, like, you conduct this ritual, like, there's a very specific description that Brandis put in there, which is like, you lay out these candles, and the person who is marked lights the candles and then snuffs them out and does these specific, like, there was a very sort of, it wasn't super specific, but specific enough that I could add some flowers and whatever, and it came off really well, and I had a starting point for that worked really well. And then she appears, her one of her other names is was it Nintra Ciota? That's the name I used for her a lot when she wasn't the Princess of Shadowglass. And they fought her, and that was a fun encounter. The sorcerer has recently gained access to polymorph and used their time in Chult after they got out of the dungeon to like, hey, well, we got to wait a day before you get your spells back that can teleport us home. I'm going to, change into a bird and just fly around and see if I can find neat things in Chult to polymorph into. And we rolled some random checks and he managed to find himself a T-Rex. So during the fight with Nitra Ciota, he polymorphed himself and another character into T-Rexes who are running around in that little library chomping on glass warriors and whatever.
Did you beef her damage up? Her damage is anemic.
I did the same thing.
12 points of damage for CR16.
I don't remember exactly now. That was the last session that we had virtually. I imagine I did the same thing with her that I did with the Demon Lords based off of our conversation years ago. And yeah, I beefed up the damage. I beefed up the hit points. I gave her spells as part of her multi-attack.
Yeah, she has 306 hit points. So her hit points are great. But then I'm looking and she's like, do 2 claw attacks, 12 damage. I'm like, 12 damage.
So anyway, yeah. So I ran that, and then, and that actually ended in an interesting, like, because that was like the big consequence to I died fighting a Serac thing, right? This is the thing that sort of came out of that. And that character who has had this romance with another character for some time now, and she's a tiefling, and she was originally like raised in Dis and was responsible for gathering souls for Dispater, and so she has this sort of dark background, and she's sort of always stuck back in that and what have you, and just can't get past that past. That's sort of her MO, and this character that she's romantically involved with is like, you gotta leave those things behind you. You gotta live for now. You can't get stuck in the past all the time, whatever. And so at the end of that moment when she was free of this curse, she took that as the moment of, you know what, you're right. I do have to live in the now. And she got down on one knee and proposed to him. And so we had a little proposal in our game that was just last week. And then we transitioned into one of the other Candlekeep mysteries, which is Alcazar's Appendix. And they went through the first part of that. I've changed it a bit, and I've made Alcazar. I've made the Hamilkai, the dead person that they're looking for. That's sort of whose sarcophagus they're looking for. That's the one with the Nether Scroll. Somebody, DM Chromie, was asking in the chat about one of them having a Nether Scroll. That's the one with the Nether Scroll. And I've changed it from being sort of, I think he's Mulhorandi. It's all very Egyptian themed. I changed it to being from the ancient empire of Narfel, which is right around where Rashimin is today. And one of the characters is from Rashimin, so I'm trying to give that character some more spotlight time. And so we started the first part of that, and of course that player who plays the character with the connection to Narfel, because the Nar people were noted demon binders, and they have to bind Gargoth. They made an infernal pact to bind Gargoth instead of killing him, because I'm having them create the Shield of the Hidden Lord for someday in the future when we run to Sit into Avernus. It'll be a nice little cameo. Right. So they're going to learn how to bind such creatures by finding this person's tomb and investigating how they did it in order to protect the Nether Scroll. And so I've connected it to all that. But of course, the player who has that connection to Narfel couldn't make it that last week, the week we started that adventure. And so he was telling me that, well, I'm going to start looking for loopholes in the Infernal Contract. And so I'm like, okay, well, that'll be fun. And so I did this whole, okay, well, that's the explanation. He went up last night to study the contract and then never came down the next morning. But the imp that gave him the contract showed up and said, oh, by the way, we got him. He's safe. He's going to be fine. We'll totally return him to you when we're done with him. Thanks, bye. Right? And so that explained why that character and that player wasn't there that session. And now I'm running all this in between session stuff on Discord with him to sort of describe what happened and where he was. And so they're in the first part of that adventure, they trek through the Anarok Desert for a while, following this Sapphire Sentinel, a big stone golem that is created to protect the Nether Scroll, and it's trying to help them find their way back to where it is, to the tomb, whatever. And so to do that, you walk into a purple worm lair. And so that's what we did last time. We walked into a purple worm lair. We, of course, inevitably fought the purple worm, and that's where the session ended last time. I didn't end up talking at all about my descent into Avernus. That was all this conversation of like 2 sessions that I had. My descent into Avernus game is over now. That happened last weekend. They had finished Idyllglen last time we chatted. My children were having issues one week, so we just didn't play. Because I'm like, if you're having this attitude before we play, I'm not going to deal with it in the game. So I just canceled the game that week. But yeah, so they made a deal with Tiamat, so that Tiamat would, when they were called upon, would come and destroy the companion. And they had the Sword of Zariel, and the character with the Sword of Zariel is like, I'm just going to go start chopping up chains while the other character is summoning Tiamat to destroy the companion. It did, like, the adventure as written assumes that this confrontation and the conflicts that might come before it, the fights that might come before it, happen under Elturel, which never really made sense to me, because under Elturel is the River Styx. But I got lots of old maps from the 3rd and 4th edition days of ruined cityscapes, so I just pulled one of those out and had it happen in the ruins of Elturel. I was gonna have like some demons show up before Zariel gets there, or some devils show up, and then some demons show up, and then another wave of devils, and then Zariel shows up. But it was the session was getting long, and I kind of wanted to get it done with, because we'd already been delayed in finishing the campaign by a week. So I just cut it down to 1 wave, and then the second wave started. I had a big, what are they called? Groistro, the big Minotaur demons. I had a big Greastro show up. They fought it for literally one round, and then Zerial like landed in the middle of it with a splatter of gore, right? And then that's when they confronted Zerial, and my youngest son managed to get a 30 on their persuasion check to redeem Zerial. Right.
Wow. Nice.
So Zerial was well and fully redeemed. They were surprised that the companion had an angel in it because that like never really comes up. There's no hints of that really anywhere in the adventure. So and then that ended and we saved the day. And so we decided we didn't vote. It's my pick. So I chose two things for what we're going to play next, and I presented them with two options, and they chose Gamma World. So we're going to play Gamma World. I think it's 7th edition, but it's the edition that came out during 4th edition D&D. Yeah.
Before E1?
I have all the expansions for it, and I've never really played it. But if you have all the expansions, the published adventures kind of go through the 10 levels of the game. So I think we're just going to... I've basically read the entire... all 3 books of Gamma World that were published in the last week. So I'm ready to go for Gamma World this weekend. So we're going to try that next. And as you are aware, my time is well over. So I managed to.
The dogs have been trying to tell you. For
can you hear the dog? Can you hear the dog upstairs barking? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
You know what? That's the joy of living in a virtual world these days. Everybody's used to hearing each other's pets.
Sam will edit it all out in post.
Because it's on top. It's on top of me talking.
You'll figure that out. You'll do very careful equalization.
Look, we are real people. We live in real houses, and some of us have pets. So you know.
Do I have the special? I don't know if I have. I have the cards that came in those boxes, and that's about it. Dave Jr. is asking about the.
You know, you can buy the entire set of cards from Drive-Through Cards.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
They come in nicely printed. They're very high quality.
I'll have to look into that and see if it's worth it for the one time I might play it.
It's like either $14 or $7. I mean, it's really reasonable. I was quite surprised because it's like 250 cards
and like actually printed cards.
If I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. The cards in it, but I can.
No, that's fine.
No,
that's okay. But I believe you.
Yeah.
I do want to mention our sponsor for this episode. We have a sponsor again for the next 3 months. It is a product called Galder's Gazetteer. If you go to Drive-Thru RPG and search for Galder's Gazetteer, Galder Galder apostrophe S, then you can find Galder's Gazetteer.
Oh yeah.
It is
currently number 2.
It is a big product. There is a lot of stuff there. It's like 192 pages. It's got new player archetypes. It's got new sort of optional rules for things. It's got monster templates and environments and traps for DMs. It's got a 5th level and a 15th level adventure. Like, it's got a lot going on. And this product came out of an individual named Lawrence who was dying of a rare form of cancer. And one of his last wishes was to have his D&D character sort of be remembered in D&D lore. And so Zipperon Disney, as he's known on the interwebs, worked to make that happen. And so, Zipperon's got a YouTube channel, and you can follow a lot of what's going on there. But they made this product to make that happen. So Galder is Lawrence's character, and now he has a gazetteer, and all of the proceeds from it go to a cancer research institute. So they had a crowdfunded thing and decided that they wanted to use part of that money to get the word out and do some sponsoring on some places, and they reached out to us. So here we are. Go check it out. I will. Sam will totally have links in the show notes for you for this episode because I'm going to send those links to him.
I will.
So. All right.
Yeah. I also want to. I want to clarify. I just looked up the drive-through cards. It's the 120 cards from all the booster packs. I don't think it has the 2 special cards that came with the Trouble in Freesboro there was a game day called Trouble in Freesboro. Came with 2 extra cards. I don't think it has that. It's 120 cards. It's $19.99 in print, $9.99 in PDF. So there you go. I put a link in the thing there just to clarify. I don't want to mislead people. I was thinking it was cheaper. I think when I got it was $14.99, but it's $19.99.
If you had been wrong about that, that would have been the first time anybody's ever been wrong on the Tome Show. So it's good.
Absolutely correct.
It's good for you to clarify that now. All right. Next on the list is Mike Shea. Mike, I went over about 5 minutes, so you only get 10. Go ahead, go.
So I get to go over for 10? Nice.
Pretty much.
So I'm running Descendant Avarice. I'm running I don't even know what it's called.
Yes.
Rime of the Frost Maiden. And I am running it for both of my groups. Both of my groups are at roughly the same point, which is the transition from chapter 1 to chapter 2. Last time we talked, I was having a lot of trouble figuring out that transition and getting kind of lost in the chapter 1 quests. My players, like the characters, had lots of quests in front of them, and I felt like, they're just going to get mired in odd jobs in 10 towns indefinitely, and meanwhile they're not leveling, and they're mad that they're not leveling, and so on and so forth.
Well, and
so I found.
Let me just so I remember where we're at. Transit. Chapter 1 is doing stuff around 10 towns. Chapter 2 is like, let's go explore more of Icewind Dale.
Wandering.
It's basically the 10 towns sort of sandboxy, run around and do a bunch of side quest thing, but now you're in a bigger region.
Kind of, and actually with less motivation to hit a lot of the places, right? At least in 10 towns, somebody was coming to you saying like, hey, this weird stuff is happening, we need your help. And the other one's like, hey, we saw a thing out in the woods, that's weird. And then they're like, oh, I guess we'll go wander. Right? And so there's a fair bit of So I was having trouble with that transition. In particular, both groups were spending a lot of time up north in Lonelywood dealing with the White Moose, which was great fun, and with Tourmaline and the stuff up there. And they looked at their quests, and then like the next quest they had to do is in Caer Konig. And Caer Konig is like as far away from Lonelywood as you can get and still be in 10 towns, right? Which means you got to go like through 6 other towns to get there. And those other towns have quests too.
Or you go across the tundra like my group
You
did.
could, right? But they they're like, but their thought is like, if I've got these quests and some of those quests, some of those quests are on the way, we might as well go to do the quests on the way. And then I'm like, that means it's going to be 3 more quests before you actually get to the Duergar. And the Duergar quest is kind of important because it ties into the bigger plot line of the whole Sunblight, Sunblight lair and the Chardalon dragon. So I figured out a nice way to deal with that, which is recognizing that the situation in Caer Konig can just be moved to whatever town you want. Like you don't have to run it in Caer Konig. So I had them go to East Haven. They were already in East Haven, and at that point they became aware of the fact that they were stealing, that the dwarves were stealing the Chardalon masthead from the ship that sunk. And I just moved those guys and said, okay, those are the ones you're going to track back to the Duergar lair. And that worked out. So at that point, they're deeply involved in Duergar. They know that Duergar is stealing Chardalon. They followed the Duergar. They made their way last night. They made their way out to the Duergar outpost. They crawled through the outpost, killed a bunch of Duergar, captured the prince, pretended to be, this was actually kind of fun. They pretended to be agents of the woman that is getting married to the king, and that she's got her own mercenary team that's checking up on the Duergar. And they convinced him that we killed a bunch of Duergar. They attacked us first. We're actually working for your new stepmom. And and he's like, so that added this, and then they dragged him back to East Haven anyway. And at that point, he figured out, wait, you're not working for my stepmom. But at that point, he gave up a bunch of intel, right? So at that point, they know about the Duergar. They know that there's this big thing coming. They have that risk, but they also know that the symbiote inside one of the characters, the Mind Flayer symbiote inside one of the characters, is growing. And if they don't deal with it, that character is going to have some permanent changes. And I'm using some of the stuff from Van Richten's guide for the dark powers, the dark gifts, and sort of I'm kind of making up my own, right? But the dark gift is like, as this thing grows, there is a symbiote dark gift, and it has its own personality, it has its own stats, it has its own languages, but it's part of you and it can tie into it. And I gave it detect thoughts. I said that the symbiote gives the character the ability to cast the spell detect thoughts once per day for free, no spell slot, right? And that it's always kind of going. So without the character's ability, Filferi is the name of the character. Without Filferi's knowledge, she will pick up thoughts from people that she just looks at because the symbiote's picking them up. So that's kind of interesting. So they're like, okay, we got to go to that wrecked ship. We know that there's a wrecked ship out there. We're going to the wrecked ship. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? It would be kind of fun. What if there are Githyanki hunters out there, that the ship that crashed because it was shot down, and there's a Githyanki craft out there who's like, yeah, spreading across the astral sea, we shot one down, it crashed, and we know it's out there somewhere, and we're here to find out if it's had influence here in the world. Because if it has, we're gonna have to call all the dragons and destroy the whole planet, right? And that way, and then like if the characters get involved, like, one of us has a symbiote, like, that'll be enough, right? So I'm now tying into this larger idea of like a Githyanki Mind Flayer war. And I also have this idea that there's actually two factions of Mind Flayers. There's one faction that wants to just pack up and go home. They didn't want to be here anyway. But there's another faction that's like, wait a minute, we can put our Elder Brain here. And we can grow a great big Mind Flayer lair, and there's lots of people, and there's lots of people underground, and there's lots of people above ground. That's lots of thralls. That's lots of, hosts. Why don't we do that? And then the players can kind of get involved between those two factions as well, with the idea that the faction that wants to go home is probably the one you're going to want to deal with more so than the other.
Now you're singing my tune, because I've had this idea for a Mind Flayer Gith, like 1 to 20 campaign in my head for 15 years, and I've just never spit it out.
Yes, so I spat it out, and I wrote up a 1 to 20 Githyanki campaign outline on Sly Flourish.
I rather enjoyed that for that exact reason, because I already had it in my head.
And I love doing those campaigns. They're really fun. They're fun to do. So I'm like, I want to use stuff from that, and that could lead to a 20th level game. Like that could take it far beyond what's in Frostmaiden. And after they deal with the Frostmaiden and all that stuff, they're like, yeah, but now there's an Elder Brain growing underneath the ground here. And then you have Elder Brains and you have Githyanki, and both of those groups can scale up to 20 level easily. Can you connect it to
if you want that. Netherese City as well, that has very little motivation to go to otherwise?
It's sort of fuzzy in my head. So I'm not ready yet to just tie those two things together completely, because I think I like the idea. So I think the other big change that I'm making to the campaign is that the Endless Night is caused by two factors: a spell cast by Oral using the Codicil of the White, and a power source from the Netherese City have to be taken care of in order to truly end the Endless Night. You can't get rid of it without dealing with both of those problems, which means whether they go to the island and get the Codicil, or they go down to Yethrin and deal with the power source, they still have to get the other one, right? I haven't figured out why yet. I don't know if it's like you got to shut the power source down in Yethrin and then cast the spell, reverse the spell by using the Codicil of the White, and you have to do both. You can't only do one.
Maybe Oral is continuing the spell and it's making it worse, but if you stop her, it won't get worse.
It's still there.
But it'll be maintained by the power source or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know that I worry too much about, like, I'm kind of happy to throw out the idea that she has to go cast it every night, right? Like, there isn't,
I like
when you're a god.
There's a certain like mythological appeal of like the god flying across the sky every night. So that's fun.
Yeah, I had this idea that like the codicil, that the energy source is sort of raw, and the codicil is controlling it. And when you stop the spell or stop her from casting it, it starts to go out of control, and things could get worse. Because then I have this other subplot that I threw in there, which is this giant elder evil named Thrune who's buried under the ice. So like maybe it's like, if you don't want Thrune to get free, you know, you have to deal with both of these, and you have to deal with them pretty quickly, because if you cast the spell from the codicil of the white and get and or stop Oral from using that every day, then that thing is going to go crazy, and Thrune is definitely getting out, and that's even worse than having Oral out. So lots of threats, right? Lots of big
Scipio in the chat says that there could be something in the city that would at least help them with the gift.
Yeah, and I think there could be. The nice thing is, like, you could certainly at this point have like groups of both Githyanki and groups of Mind Flayers wandering around in all these places, you know, trying to do their thing too. And certainly the Mind Flayers would be interested in the power source. So I think there's, you know, there's a lot of interesting factions. And I think I'm kind of thinking ahead, and like I'm also then keeping my mind fuzzy, right. Except my players are definitely going to that ship next, which is I got to figure at least that part of it out, right? And I know my other group is also really excited about that ship, so I better get it figured. I gotta sit down and look at it, because like when I ran the Duergar outpost, it was pretty boring. Like I actually said, like I kept thinking, like, where'd this outpost come from? Did they build it? Like it's been here all this time and no one noticed. So I'm like, what if it was, you know? So I had to add some stuff, and I did some rolling on some tables. I'm like, it's actually a Dragonborn outpost by blue Dragonborn that were actually mercenaries of Akar Kessel back when he brought all the armies in, right, 100 years ago. And so they had built this citadel while he was building up his armies and attacking 10 towns. And they were one of the I'm pretty sure the Dragonborn weren't actually around back then, but I don't care.
I'm more concerned about the blue, because blue is blue or desert dragons. Yeah. So.
But well, yeah.
See, I have a much easier response to that. That outpost on Kelvin's Cairn is right above the Dwarven Valley, so it's just an old abandoned Dwarven lookout post.
Yeah, so that would have worked. That would have worked just fine too. The problem is it didn't have any flavor in the book, right?
And, yeah, it's very drab in the book.
Yeah, sure. And I was like, and the problem is, like, I literally, it's funny because I shot a video on Monday about how to prep your game in 15 minutes. And then yesterday, I literally had 12 minutes before the game to do all of my prep. And I'm like, I better come up with something, because this place is boring. This place is boring. And I did, and it was enough. And I did my quantitative analysis of asking my wife, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how'd you like the game? And she's like an 8.5. I'm like, ooh, that's pretty good for a game I did 12 minutes.
Now that we're face to face,
that's better.
Now that we're face to face again after a year of being virtual, my players expect maps for everything. And so most of my prep is just drawing maps and finding the right minis ahead of time, so I don't have to do it in the middle of the game.
Don't get me started. I just had like a conversation with 80 people on Twitter about that today. So, and I think my group is used to me not having maps, but I'll tell you, like, that. So this is actually a very interesting question, because my group is probably going to start getting back together. We got one person that's left that hasn't finished their full vaccinations yet. And then we're probably going to come back to the table. And like, I was talking to another friend of mine, and she's like, what tool are you going to use then? And I'm like, I don't know. And so I got to like rethink what it's like to play at the table again. Because I'm really used to playing online now. Well, like, I don't know how, all of the maps I've been doing are copy and pasted and drawing like little lassos to grab whatever part of the map that they can see and dropping it into Discord. Like, that's how I've been running it. I guess I can still kind of do that with like a monitor and stuff. But then I think like, well, how did I do it? I could barely even remember how I ran a game, 18 months ago. So it's just weird. Yeah, it's just the whole process is weird. And like, we're all used to all these tools that we've got all the time. And I don't know. It's going to be very strange. So, well, I don't know. That whole thing is going to be interesting. Anyway, so yeah, that's I've got these sort of big things on the horizon, like Githyanki and Mind Flayers and Cult of Thrune and Oral and Yethrin and the Duergar. And like, we'll see how all that plays out, right? Like, I don't know. That's a lot of fronts. And I really only want like
it feels like you've got like 4 different major fronts, and it's worth pointing out only half of them come from the adventure that you're running. The rest of them are all like completely homebrew Mike Shea.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that I really praise Rime of the Frostmaiden for, is that there is lots of room for you to add in your own stuff, and it's not hard to add in your own stuff. The part that, but then the thing that I don't, that I criticize it for is I just don't feel like it's giving me everything I want for $50 to help me run an adventure, right? Like I'm doing a lot of work, probably not quite as well. I don't know. Yeah, probably not quite as much work as I did with Descent into Avernus, because where Descent into Avernus has a structure I didn't want, Frostmaiden doesn't have a structure at all, and I have to add one. So it's kind of, it's kind of me sort of figuring out one way or the other how to
well,
do that.
It has the structure in chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, and then
it's just that the because it's the beginning that doesn't have the structure. It's kind of it's not, it doesn't make sense,
Right. Yeah, so like there's a lot of things where I'm like, well, there are places in chapter 2. I'm totally ignoring that bell.
What
there
bell?
are places in chapter 2.
Yeah.
There are places in chapter 2 that have no real tie to anything else, but they sound cool. So I'm like, well, what can I put in this place that will help the characters go see it? Like how can I hook one place to another? So an example was, I think they need the crystal, the what's it called? The psi crystal from Tourmaline to power their ship to fly away, which means my group already has it. So it's kind of one of those quests where like, oh, I already have the objective for the quest in my hand. Here you go. And then the quest is over and they fly away in the ship. And I was like, well, what if instead they actually do need a power source, but it was stolen by gnolls, and those gnolls are in the Howling Cave. So now there is, there's now a connection between two places in chapter 2. You go, you talk to mind flayers, the happy mind flayers, the friendly ones. They say, hey, we want a power source, but it's over here in this Howling Cave joint, right? And you got to go there, and then you deal with them, and then you can talk to them, and they tell you about the fact that there's vampire gnolls out there too. So another example is Anjuk's Bell. I don't remember the name of the quest, right? But there's the bell, and you ring it, and a whale comes, and he takes you to the island. And I was like, what if the bell was made of Chardalon, and it got stolen by pirates, and that's what's on the ship? That, so you could go to the bell and be like, well, I can't ring it. There's no bell. And the dwarves said, yeah, we tried to get it, but it had been stolen, and we think pirates stole it. And then when you hear about the pirate ship,
the clapper in the bell? Like the bell's there, but there's no clapper?
No, I think the whole bell.
Oh, okay.
Right? I think the entire bell got taken, right? The whole thing was made of Chardalon.
So the way that would be obvious to anybody playing the adventure, because the way it's set up, Anjakuk's Bell is like on this piece of ice, and it's a little like deck with a big bell hanger for you to ring the bell, and then so it wouldn't just be like, how are they going to know the bell is gone? It would be obvious. When they got there, they would see that the bell was gone.
One of the many old coots that's hanging out in Ten Towns is going to be like, yeah, you want to know how to get to that island? Rumor is you have to ring the bell on Anjakuk's Bell, whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh yeah, but I heard the bell got stolen. Oh yeah, I heard pirates took it. And this other guy's like, oh, by the way, there's a frozen pirate ship out there, the Dark Duchess. And then you go out there, and then you deal with dragons. So, now I can tie all these things together. The third thing is like, I want Gant. Gant is in prison, and I want him to have information the characters need, so that they have to go and talk to him, and they have to convince a prisoner at this place, a former member of the Arcane Brotherhood, they like, maybe he's the one that really knows about the connection between Oral and the Codicil of the White and the power source that's down in Yethrin, and he's the only one that does. But if you want it, you got to go talk to him, and then he's gonna want something. Maybe he's gonna want them to break him out, right? And now you have to do a heist. You have to do an escape where they have to break. They have to break him out. So I've got a bunch of ideas for these sort of places, right? And the hooks, like the hooks that are in the book, are actually kind of weak. So I need stronger hooks and reasons, and have some kind of connection that's drawing them towards the main plot of the book. So I'm spending more time on that now that I'm starting to dig into chapter 2. Like one of the other things I did is when the ghost that's in Tourmaline, that took over Trex, the kobold, I made him a dead member of the Arcane Brotherhood, rather than the goofy storyline that he had that had no relation to anything else. And now they have an Arcane Brotherhood guy who's with them, who can tell them stuff about the other members of the Arcane Brotherhood and about, he's a great source for like getting more information to help guide them. And he knows that our member of the Arcane Brotherhood who got killed in East Haven had a map to the Lost Spire, which is the one piece of the Netheril city that is available. And then that drives the characters to go there and find out what's going on there. So there's all these sort of ties going on. And I think it'll be stronger in the end, but I feel like I got to sit there with a big notebook and write all this stuff out. When I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I still feel like the adventure's just not not helpful.
I mean, Mike and I have talked about this a lot on his Discord channel, in that how do you fix that when the adventure isn't written in a way that makes it make sense to you, and you feel like you're doing way too much work as the DM. And there are a few ways to fix it, but the problem is he's already like halfway through. He's through chapter 1 already, and now it's like, okay, now is the time I need to think about how to do this. But because the book didn't give any guidance on doing it from the get-go, from the very beginning, it's kind of like now he's doing even more work to try to kludge everything in.
Yeah.
And
part of it's
unfortunate.
Part of it is self-inflicted because I also part of the reason I'm doing this is I want to offer guidance for how to run the book, right? And I don't feel like I can read it and give that guidance. I think I have to run it, and I'm one of the few people that will run it for multiple groups in multiple ways, and so I can kind of capture all that so that years down the road when people are running it, they go, oh yeah, right. I get lots of people who talk about running how I ran Horde of the Dragon Queen, right? And so like I'm glad I did that.
I also get lots of people that mention, hey, you're doing this thing in your campaign. Well, let me tell you what Sly Flourish said. And I'm like, I know him. He talks endlessly, everyone.
You should talk to that Sly Flourish guy.
Yeah. Actually, I've been seeing a lot of people talking about Lazy Dungeon Master suddenly seems to have gotten a second wind lately. So
yeah, turns out YouTube's this popular place that you can put videos, people watch them. So, yeah.
Someday I'll look into that.
So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at currently, and I'm in a better place than I was last time we talked. Last time we talked, I was really kind of frantically running around trying to figure out how the hell to get them to move forward. Now I feel like they're forward, and I feel like I just got to lay more road out in front.
Nice.
So yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, we're going to be done with Mike's time. I want to remind people that the primary way of supporting the show, the primary way that we pay the bills, is through our Patreon at patreon.com/thetome show. We've got a great community of folks over there. I try to pop in and post something every couple of weeks or so and talk about some things that we're thinking about or what we're doing or whatever. But I've moved away from all of the affiliate stuff, and I've moved away from the sponsors, with the exception of this rather worthy one that came along and sought me out. And Patreon has sort of become the main way that I'm paying for our little hobby of getting together on a regular basis and talking about D&D. So if you want to support us, patreon.com/thetome show. Go do that. All right. Sam.
Yes,
tell us,
sir.
You don't have any time
left. The episode only has about 10 minutes left, so you've got that much time. Go.
All right. That's okay. All right. See you, everybody.
Which is funny because we started the episode with Mike and I saying, well, we don't have too much, and Sam saying, that's okay, I can talk all night.
I got time. Yeah.
So I don't remember how far I got last time, what I talked to you about, but the party went to Kelvin's Cairn. They, unlike Mike's team, which went through all the towns to get from Lonelywood over to Caer Konig, my group went across the tundra past Kelvin's Cairn, which was great for me because it was right at the time when I did want to start putting a bunch of Chapter 2 stuff in, and so I could put it in as they traveled across. And one of the things that happened, I'm sure I talked to you about them meeting the Reghead tribesmen and learning that the young guy in the Reghead tribe, he's the son of the chief of that tribe, but the two tribes are the wolf tribe is split because the regular part of the wolf tribe thinks that their leader thinks that he's the chosen of Oral, and meanwhile the tiger tribe leader thinks they're the chosen of Oral. So they're warring, and the wolf tribe is becoming cannibalistic. So a part of the wolf tribe split off. My group ran into them and learned a bunch of stuff about them. And the reason I did that is because they 2 of my party members are Reghead tribesmen, and so they're now learning about the things going on. And one of those people is the one who is actually the heir of the tiger tribe leader, who was put in a basket and set afloat on the Sea of Moving Ice when he was a baby, and was rescued and is still alive, but doesn't really know what his connection to the tiger tribe leader is. But so now that's getting worked in. So I was able to do that while they were going across. Also, they ran into the black cabin while they were going across. I know I already talked about that on a previous episode. They get to Kelvin's Cairn. They find the Duergar outpost. Now, they haven't been to Caer Konig yet, so I did that quest backwards. They go into the Duergar outpost. They talk to Nildar Zardarok, right? Nildar Sunblight, Zardarok's son, and they find that he is there with just a few Duergar and a whole bunch of black ice. He's got all this black ice collected, and he knows they're not from around here, so he tries to negotiate with them and make a deal with them that any black ice they find, if they give it to him, he'll make sure that they get free passage and they can go back down south, and they'll be spared the coming problems that are going to come to the Dale, right? And so they are trying to talk to him, and they almost start negotiating and saying, yes, we'll do this. In fact, they got to the point where he told the person in the party that is like the scribe who was taking notes through the whole thing, he tells that PC, hey, start writing the contract and I'll sign it, and you'll sign it, and we'll be fine, and you can go ahead and go on your way. And they decide they're going to attack him instead. So they have this big fight. They kill him. They clear the fortress. They go through. They find tons and tons of Chardalyn that's been collected. It's all wrapped up. It's in cases. It's in boxes. It's in crates. It's in barrels. It's getting ready to be shipped out over to, they don't know where. But, of course, it's going to go to Zardarok's fortress because he's using it to build the dragon. But they don't know he's using it to build a dragon. They're still investigating. One of the PCs goes and investigates the tower that's there. There's a sort of separate tower that's through a secret passageway, and finds an old crossbow. And when they pick up the old crossbow, they also find a little Chardalyn dragon statuette. Okay. Now, when they defeated Nildar, they also found a map, and the map has marked on it Dirth's location, so it's got a spot where Dirth is. The other brother, he's in East Haven at the ferry, and it's got a spot marked where the actual Sunblight Fortress is, and it's got a spot marked where they are right now in Caer Konig, because that's where Nildar was. So it's got letters for that, an N, a D, and an X, right? And then it has a dot for each of the 10 towns, and it has 2 green arrows on it, one that goes to one town and then leaves from that town and goes to the other. And so those of you who have looked at the adventure know that that's the start of the dragon's flight path. Okay, now they don't know that that's what it is. All they know is now they have a map of 10 towns, because I actually made the map for them and gave it to them on Roll20, right? And so now they have this map in front of them, and they're not really sure what it all means, but eventually they figure out, okay, the D, because they found the letter, there's a letter there as well in Nildar's office that talks about where Dirth is, right? And so they realize, okay, that's in East Haven. Oh, it says Dirth is in East Haven. There's a D right there. Okay, that D must mean Dirth is there. The N is where we are. That's where Nildar was. So what's the X? Oh, well, that must be Zardarok. Okay, so now they know what that is, but they don't know what the green arrows mean yet. So they leave there. They go to now the person who found the dragon statuette does not tell them that they found a dragon statuette. He keeps it secret. Okay. They go to Caer Konig. They meet Trovis, the drunk dragonborn, who embarrasses himself, gives them, tries to take them to the Northern Lights Tavern Inn, and leads them all through town and tells them all this history of all the town and all these quests that he's gone on and all this stuff. But he's half drunk. He's like belching and burping, and he almost passes out one time, and all this stuff. And then he gets to the inn. They go into the inn. The sisters, the Sherrard sisters who own the inn, they put Trovis to bed. They talk to the party, and they're very, very nice, but they give little hints that they're followers of Oral, like they're members of the church, right, at the Church of Oral. So the party's like really suspicious, of course, and they don't know what's going on, but they're like, you know what, we're just going to go to the they find out also when they get there from the sisters that Torga's caravan is going to be in town the next day. And so they want to go to that marketplace, and then they're going to leave and they're going to go right to East Haven. Okay. And they give them back the lantern, because when they're talking, they discover, oh yeah, we found this lantern at this fortress. And they were like, oh, well, did you get the other stuff? There's a pearl necklace and 2 goats. And the party had discussed taking the goats and decided, we'll just leave the goats here. So now they feel bad because they didn't bring the people's goats home. But that's beside the point. So they go the next day, they go to the marketplace, and the PC that had found the Black Ice Dragon tries to start negotiating with one of Torga's workers, right? One of the people who's traveling with Torga's caravan. And that person says, oh, they're talking, and he said something like, oh, you have secrets. I like secrets. I'll trade you secrets. And so the PC brings out this little dragon and says, oh, I'll trade this. And he says, no, I give you a secret and you give me a secret. That's trading secrets. If you want to trade goods, you got to go talk to Torga. And he points over to Torga, and Torga's standing there talking to Sefik. Okay. Now, they had suspected a long time ago that Sefik was the killer, or that someone on Torga's caravan was the killer, because they caught on that every time Torga's went somewhere, there was a death afterwards, right? But they don't know who did it, right? So as this PC is talking to this other person, he says, oh, that's Torga. I'll go talk to Torga. And the other guy says something like, yeah, but, don't, maybe you might not want to interrupt because that's Sefik, and he's a little, this is how he gets out of doing work, is that he just stands there and talks, and he's kind of a sleaze bag, and he doesn't like whatever, he's really weird, and he's not wearing any warm weather clothing and whatever. And also there's a rumor that they've got a dead body with them, and so he's seeding this through, right? So the player says, okay, well, I'll trade with Torga or whatever. But the player also is assuming that all the other players are listening in and eavesdropping, right? So the player is in character talking to this person and telling them a bunch of stuff, and showed them the figurine or whatever. And the worker calls Torga over and says, Torga, this it's a tabaxi. So this cat has something to trade, and so they're negotiating. And the players of the PC is assuming that everybody else is eavesdropping, but none of them are. They're all doing other stuff. So that player says a whole bunch of stuff that would be really good for the other people to know, but none of them are listening. Now, the players themselves know, but my players are really good at separating player knowledge from character knowledge, and they know that none of their characters know the stuff that this PC just told this guy, right? So meanwhile, one of the other PCs is over there talking to Sefik, and Sefik is acting like a real sleazebag. He basically asks the PC out. He's like, wow, you look like a really hardy bodyguard, and I'm also very hardy, and you don't seem to be affected very much by the cold. I'm also not affected by the cold, and hey, we should talk and have conversations and tell stories to each other. And he's but he's doing it in a real sleazy way, right? And she, of course, is having none of it. She's like, I got to get the hell away from this guy. I don't trust him, whatever. But she doesn't know that the other PC is over there being told, yeah, they got a dead body, and everywhere they go, there's all this stuff. So they end up just leaving town. They don't confront him. They just get their stuff. They make a trade for all this food and different stuff, and they get the heck out of town, and they go to East Haven. Now, the reason I tell you all that stuff is because later on, it sort of comes out that one of the other players is a little bit like, you need to quit keeping secrets. You need to have your PC start acting like a team member and telling us all what you know, because hiding stuff from all of us doesn't help us. We just left what could potentially have been a real an interaction that we needed to have, and instead we just turned around and left town, and we traveled, and we went over to this other thing to do this thing, and we could have actually finished a quest. We could have done but because you didn't have your PC play fair in the sandbox, basically, by giving us all the information that when we've been giving you all the information we know. So now it kind of screwed the party a little bit, because now they could have taken care of a problem, and they didn't take care of a problem. So anyway, so they go to East Haven. When they walk into East Haven, they see that there's a someone being brought out and tied to a stake, and they're about to set everything on fire. And one of the PCs, so they're in this huge crowd, right? And one of the PCs has a control flames spell and decides to do control flames and causes the flames to sort of move away from, or so there's a big bonfire, and part of that spell you can cause some of the flames to go out, so you can make a 5-foot square, like you can make flame leave that 5-foot square. So that's what they did. And so to the townsfolk, it looked like the spellcaster that was tied up being burned at the stake, whose mouth is sewn shut and his eyes are covered with a blindfold and his fingers and arms have been bound, can still cast a spell because he's casting to make it so that those flames don't burn him. And so everybody starts freaking out. They're like, "Oh, he can still cast spells!" I thought he was
going to be the chosen one. The gods have divined that this man will not die.
No, they're like, he still has arcane power, even the, like, we got to get out of here, he's dangerous. So they start, like a stampede starts, all the crowd are leaving, right? And so I had set up a map and I had all these tokens. I had like 85 tokens of people around this like center thing, and I started having them rush around, and like people getting pushed around, and they moved through. And one of my PCs doesn't like crowds, so it really freaked him out. Like that's his got a phobia, right? So it's like, oh no, and so all this stuff happens. Meanwhile, so now the Captain Arlagath sees, oh great, now the fire isn't killing, and just goes and takes a spear and like kills Dazan, right? Just kills him flat out, because he needs to be executed, and if he's not going to get burned the way that the court, or whoever the speaker decided, then we need to get out. But also before that, the speaker gave like a speech about, here's what you're accused of and here's why you're being put to death and all that. So, and then they spoke to Captain Arlagath, and so they hear all this stuff. Meanwhile, then they see Velen Harpel is there as well watching. And so of course after that they end up going in, and they meet with Captain Arlagath because he overhears them talking to Velen, and they're telling Velen, oh yeah, we just saw this and we just did that and we met with this person and we saw these horrible things, and we have this note that says that Dirth is going to be at the ferry. And of course Captain Arlagath is like 10 feet away, and they're just talking away. So of course I had Captain Arlagath start inching closer to them to listen to what they were talking about. And finally, one of them realized, because I was like barely moving the token, then I'd barely move the token, and I'd barely move and finally one of them realized, is that guy standing right next to me? And I was like, yep, and you're still talking. You're just talking away. So they end up talking to Captain Arlagath in the town hall, and he gives them permission to go check out the ferry. He tells them about the state of what's happening in the town and why Dazan was being, put to the stake and all that. And they show him the map that shows all the different locations and all that stuff. And then they go out to the ferry. When they get out to the ferry, there's nobody there. And they find in the ferry, two pieces of parchment rolled up. One of them is on a table and one of them is like on the ground somewhere. And as they're looking, they unroll the one and it looks like almost the same as the map that they have already had, but it's got 2 more arrows on it. And they start rolling that up and putting that away. And as soon as they start rolling it up and putting it away, and they grab the other one, Dirth he doesn't become visible. He's a mind master Dwergar, so he tries to confuse one of the PCs and cause them to attack someone else. And the PC rolled very low on their save, so they ended up going over and trying to attack one of the other PCs. The attack did not succeed, but then they're like, what are you doing? What's going on? And then Dirth becomes visible and rushes at them and attacks. And so they have this battle with Dirth right in the middle of it. And here's one thing I want to say about this adventure. They put this great artwork in Roll20, except the artwork that they use for Dirth has him standing in his tiny-fied form, because he's kind of a reverse Dwergar. He gets tiny instead of getting larger, right? They've got him in the image next to a goblet, and he's tiny, standing next to the goblet. So it's like, well, gee, there's a hint. I can't show the players.
Every now and then they do that. I noticed that.
Yeah. Same with
in cursive Strahd.
In the description.
In cursive Strahd, the woman who worships devils or whatever in Vallaki shows up in the artwork with an imp on her shoulder. It's like, well, now I can't show them that artwork because they don't know that stuff yet.
Yeah. And the Bell and Harpel artwork has her with her kobolds, so I had to cut that out, And the Cephalic, it's like the description is, this he has no weapons and he's got whatever, but then the picture of him has a big ice sword. It's like, well,
Right.
what do you what do you want me to do? So anyway, so they kind of guessed it, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And then of course he did get tiny during the battle and ran away, and then they proceeded to fight, and then 2 or 3 other Duergar hammerers in these huge metal suits with giant claws and a big hammer as the other hand come out, and they have this big fight. They end up pushing those guys off and into the water. They cast Thin the Ice on the water there, and they pushed the guys into it. So they just basically were these big bricks sinking down. So they did some really interesting different tactical things to actually make that happen. At the end of the whole battle, Dirth actually escaped, but they got his other parchment piece, and the other parchment piece was a document that shows kind of a picture of the Chardalyn dragon, and it's got some arrows in different places, and it's signed by an engineer. It says, something engineer, blah, 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 whatever clan. And basically it says a couple of things. It says that there's a couple of weaknesses for the creature. It's got too low of a speed, and its joint needs to be reinforced here and here, and the tail needs to have some sharp spines put on it for maximum devastation or something like that, right? So by now, the party's catching on, and they're like, so let's see, we found all this Chardalyn, and he wanted us to bring him Chardalyn, and we found some scale-shaped Chardalyn, although they thought it was a shield. They thought they were little shield-shaped pieces instead of scales. And then the PC's like, oh, you mean like this dragon statuette that I had found, like the one that she was, the player was going to trade off. And it's sort of like, that's at the point when they realized, okay, we didn't know you had that. We didn't know you had this other stuff. We didn't know you had this other information because you're not talking to us. So basically the rest of that session, although it was a full-length session, but the last few minutes of it was kind of one of those realizations of, okay, some people in this party know things that they're not telling other people, and it's now causing a problem. And I'm not talking about the player secrets. The player secrets are like kind of not secrets anymore because they've all been played out, because it was a fun thing for them to sort of try to figure out what everybody's secrets are and let's do this and this. But this player is playing this PC as a very secretive busybody, and it's starting to come back to them because now things are getting serious, and they're starting to really need to be able to put information together, and they're not able to put all the information together because one of the players has been holding out, so to speak, on them. And so that kind of came to a head in the last session. And so that's basically, that was the end of that, is they found those engineering plans. They now know there's going to be a dragon, probably. And I even showed them the picture in Roll20 of the Chardalyn dragon, because they had the drawing from the engineer. And so now they know there's some serious stuff, but now it's sort of like, okay, now there's a moment of reckoning where, okay, is this party going to really work together, or are they going to end up like ditching somebody because they can't play nice in the sandbox? So
Nice.
I heard my timer go off, so that's why I'm stopping.
Well, it didn't stop any. It usually doesn't stop anybody, right? The timer goes off so we can kind of keep track of where we're at, not because anybody's going to care. So.
Yeah, I know. So the thing is, like, I've had this sort of thing has happened. I mean, there's conversations all over through multiple years of things like this, where what happens if you give one particular player information, and oftentimes the discussion is, well, how do you get a player to separate player knowledge from character knowledge, and how do you make it so that it works, right? And this is one of those cases where it's the opposite, because all the other players were like, okay, well, I know as a human being in real life that this PC that is in my party knows these things, but my player doesn't know, so I can't act on it. So how am I supposed to deal with that? One of my players sent me a message and was like, I don't know if I should be upset or how I should deal with this or what I should be doing, but sometimes it's uncomfortable because I want to poke this player and try to, like, in game get them to accidentally reveal the secret. But sometimes the particular player that was texting me, that player, he said, sometimes I can't I don't have a good way to do it. Like I'm not fast enough to do it in a way that it makes sense and doesn't just come off like I'm not able to separate player knowledge from character knowledge. And so what do I do about that? And so we had a conversation about that, and ultimately there had to be an out of game conversation with the player that's keeping secrets, but it's just one of those things, right? It's part of the game, is that you, especially one with built-in secrets, right? And so much information.
And it doesn't have to be a negative part of the game, so long as the players know that that's the kind of game that's happening, right? I mean, every drama that's ever been on television ever, like if people just wouldn't keep secrets, everything would be resolved in 15 minutes, and it wouldn't be, like.
Right.
I love that. That's like the Darth Vader meme. It's like, tell your sister you were right. Oh yeah, and check out that planet Exegol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah.
It's
right. I mean, and it's true.
Characters
right?
keeping
it's
secrets drives
but
drama, but if that's not the kind of game that people want to play, then that's different.
Well, the thing is, like, and that's where the weirdness with Rime of the Frostmaiden comes in, is it kind of is the way that everybody wants to play at first, because you have a built-in set of secrets and everybody knows that each other have secrets. But when the secrets start becoming, well, this player found this thing and this player learned this information and chose not to share it with the other people because they just thought everybody was eavesdropping anyway, then it's partly a miscommunication issue and partly someone made assumptions based on something that wasn't
I find
there,
a lot of
right?
times, whether I start a campaign with we have secrets from each other, sometimes that'll be part of my opening session 0 questions. What secret are you keeping from everybody? Whatever. And whether or not you go into a campaign with that expectation, I find that by the time they hit, level 5 or so, the expectation is that, but it's D&D, and so eventually we come together and we're a team, and all of that stuff goes away. It's just an opening gambit. It's not the way the game will be played. I think if you really want to play a game that really plays up this idea of secrets and what have you that players keep from each other, maybe find a different game, because D&D is not built around that concept.
Well, so I don't want to make it seem like this player was purposefully being a jerk, right? Like they totally weren't. They're playing their character the way they played their character from the beginning, right? But the problem is that now they're about to be 5th level, like you just mentioned 5th level, right? They literally, at the end of that session, I said, okay, level up to 5th level, right? So they're 5th level. By the time this party is 5th level, they've all been traveling together for this long, right? And they've leveled up to all these levels. They should be able to talk to each other and not keep secrets that are important, right, for the group working together. But the thing is, with Rime of the Frostmaiden, there is so much information, right? There's so many disparate pieces of information that they get. If they're not putting them together because somebody's withholding some piece of knowledge, and that's why they're not putting them together, it really hurt them last session. It really hurt them that player was not forthcoming with what they knew. And I mean, so then I question myself, right, as the DM, should I have just said, hey everyone, you will all see this, right? Or do I say, and they rolled perception checks and nobody saw and nobody heard what was happening. So, that's within the mechanics of the game. So do I override that? And I just let it go. And then it really came back to haunt them later on in the session, because when it finally figured out, one of the players was like, all right, this is almost upsetting now. So. But, it happens. But with Ryan, it was particularly
sometimes
weird.
I even find that those things happen and it feels really bad, and I go back and I post-mortem and should I have done this differently and whatever, and then I move forward. I use the stumbling block as a creative launching point, whatever, and it ends up becoming better in the long term. But it doesn't make it not feel crappy, for that week or whatever after it happens.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, by now everybody's okay with we already resolved it. But I'm just bringing it up because it is something that when you have a game where it's very sandboxy in the beginning and there are a lot of disparate quests and not every one of them is directly connected, but the DM, that is me, is trying to put in things that connect so that they'll catch on sooner or later with all and be able to realize how all these are connected. But you can't do that if somebody's holding those pieces back. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. But anyway,
all right. Well,
otherwise, don't get me wrong. It's still a super fun. It's still extreme. We had a lot of fun. Yeah. It's not, nobody rage quit the game. It's not.
Right. Well, very good. All right. Well, we are, the three of us have talked for 15 minutes about our game, and 15 plus 15 plus 15 equals an hour and 15 minutes, right? So I think it is time.
Yeah, that math checks
I think
out.
it is time to wrap up the episode. So yeah, that's it. That's our games for June. Thanks for joining us. We're recording this on a Thursday night. I think I caught wind that there was some other big thing going on in the D&D community tonight.
I don't think so.
On Thursday night.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
No, I can't
it's
think
amazing
anything.
that of course, the time that I've chosen to record most of our episodes is the same day of the week that the most popular D&D show of all time is also airing. But
yeah, the most popular episode.
Oh yeah, no, exactly right. But you know what?
Oh really?
It's the final episode of the campaign.
It's the final. Oh
yeah.
Yeah, the final episode of the campaign.
So
the full campaign.
I am still way behind, so that's okay.
Yeah, I'm actually going to spoil and go straight to the end.
So.
I haven't. We watched the first beginning, and then we'll just jump right into this one.
I don't watch.
I don't watch it all.
I have no doubt in the race.
I listen to the podcast.
So if I can share, can I share an anecdote quickly?
Sure,
here?
whatever.
A thing about this. Because I was really, there's a wonderful YouTube video with Tony Hawk on Wired called "The Levels of Expertise of Skateboarding," where he takes skateboarding and he breaks it down into what he considers to be the levels of difficulty as it goes up, and it sort of scales up on an exponential growth curve, right? So it's the first move to the next move, and he does them all until he gets to a point and he's like, yeah, I'm not doing any more of these moves because I'm gonna seriously get hurt. So the level of the difficulty, and then he goes, and these last three, no one's ever done them before. right? We know they can be done, but no, I think it was two, and ended up between when he filmed it and when it went out, somebody had done it. It was a 1280 half pipe move or something.
Yeah. Wow.
And anyway, so I was thinking about the levels of complexity of D&D games, and what does that look like from the simplest, most straightforward, grab the starter set and play with some friends, then what's on the tail end. And this episode of Critical Role is probably at the very tail end of the most complex, most amount of energy and effort, most viewed, most detailed D&D game any of us will ever see. It's if you look at how big a deal Vecna Ascended was, where they had 9 players, they had movie stars showing up for cameos in the middle of the adventure. It's just insane to think about what goes into one of these. So it's worth watching just to see a single D&D game that is this tremendous amount of energy and effort and attention.
Yeah, but I'm about 150 episodes away from getting to that point in the story, and I don't want to spoil myself.
Even if you're, right? Yeah.
So here's the thing, right?
About the story, and you don't want to spoil yourself. You probably shouldn't watch the final one. If you're me, it's it'll be okay.
For me, because I don't watch it, I don't watch it. I don't listen to it as I just no offense to anybody. I hear it's a great show. I just don't.
I don't know why you can't watch 180 episodes of a 5-hour show.
Right. Yeah.
There are only 3 actual play shows that I listen to. It's them. It's Eugenio's Last Refuge, and it's Sam's when we get one.
There's one coming.
Okay.
I actually am playing the last session of that campaign tomorrow night. So there you go. But so the beauty of not ever having watched it is I can actually, so the only episode I've ever seen is the last episode of the first season. And the reason I saw that was because Matt Colville had posted a video about here's what's going on in this in case you didn't catch it, right? Here's why this was such a impactful moment, and here's how to make that work in your game too, right? And so I can actually watch like the last episode and still get a lot out of it.
I'll catch up on the story. Like I knew who the characters are, and I know some of it. I won't get it all, but it's like just to see a D&D game run like that with that amount of like, I don't even want to use like the word production value, because I think that like, that's selling it differently, but just the amount of energy. They've been going on 447 hours of D&D for this campaign online. 450 hours. It's amazing. It's just an amazing feat.
All right, so I think like 10 minutes ago, I was ending the episode. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. We should have ended it and let this all be like extra stuff for folks on the stream, but here we are. So this was the episode of Behind the DM Screen for whatever month this is, June of 2021. If you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at Squatch, SQUACH. Mike?
Yo.
How are people going to find you?
Oh, go to slyflourish.com.
And I know you're not used to promoting yourself and shilling, but let people know how to find you.
Yep, slyflourish.com. Go to that website. Everything's linked up there. You want to find all my crap, it's there. All right,
and Sam, what about you?
DM Samuel on Twitter and rpgmusings.com.
Right, and we want to say thanks to our sponsor, Galder's Gazetteer. Go over and find that on DriveThru RPG. And show them some support and, raise some money for cancer research. Not to research new cancers, Mike, but to research how to, cure cancers.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's terrible. Don't research new cancers.
All right.
You already have enough terrible
That's
cancers.
the end of the episode. Say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
All right. If I can get over to my second screen.
When does that game start? Is that 10?
I think it's earlier. I think it's been going on.
I mean, it's not going on. It's on Twitch, right?
Is it at 7?
I don't know. I've never watched it. I've literally never watched an episode. I can tell you, Mike, that I have used only 15% of my battery on my iPad. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Dar Jr. said 9 p.m. California time.
Oh my god!
So it doesn't start until midnight. Yeah. Oh, jeez. So we're not in competition with them. Okay, that's all right.
Imagine midnight to 7 a.m. It's a 7-hour. They've already done it. It's actually pre-recorded.
Oh, they pre-recorded it? Yeah.
They did. And it's 7 hours long. One episode is 7 hours long.
Even starting it at 9 to 7 hours long. Oh, that is not okay.
There's part of me that wants to download all of those episodes and just have a local copy. So you're someday if the whole internet fails and I have no other source of entertainment, at least I've got 500 hours of this D&D game.
Dave says it might be 9 p.m. Central. He's not sure. So.
Yeah. That'd make more sense. That'd be in an hour.
All right.
But I'm not.
Well, I'm gonna listen to it on podcast someday. So. It's time to wrap up this show. So say goodbye to the stream.
Goodbye, stream. Thank you all for hanging out.